What's going on, guys, and welcome to the first ever Calling Stations poker vlog. Now, bear with us because we're definitely not the best content creators just yet. Long story short, editing, pretty difficult.
Very.
But we're working on it. Bear with us. We're doing our best to grind it out. But Sal, what kind of a session do they have in store for this episode?
So this is a crazy session for my buddy Matt here. He goes on some highs and lows, as you'll heard in the intro, some of the amazing highs and brutal lows. I have a pretty, steady session. Just kind of grind my way up, and then I have one big hand at the end that kind of defines my entire session here. However, let's get into some hands and hope you enjoy.
So this hand's going to start off with me being a phenomenal vlogger and completely missing pre-flop action. To catch y'all up, under the gun opens to 10, folds around to me with pocket threes on the button. I've got a pretty straightforward call here, no reason to do anything else. And both blinds fold, so we're going to go heads up. Flop comes pretty decent for us, 6-5 tray with 2 clubs. Unfortunately, we see the under the gun razor. Check it over to me. We have a pretty clear value bet here because there are a lot of bad turns for my hand and also turns that kill action. So I decided to bet 15 and we get a call. The turn is the king of hearts, which in all essence is basically a brick. Under the gun decides to check it over to me one more time, and I've got another very clear value bet with bottom set here, and I decide to bet 40. Surprisingly, under the gun decides to check jam now for a total of about 180-ish. Obviously never folding. I make the call and get good news. We actually have one out. Our opponent went ahead and flopped himself top set of sixes and took us straight to Stuckville.
Alright, so Matt started off the session great, paying down $200 in our very first hand that we recorded. I try to turn it around. I look down at pocket jacks. It folds around the middle position and he makes it $10. After a little bit of tanking, we're going to make a clear 3-bet to $30 in the douchiest way possible. It ends up folding around back to him, and we'll see a flop heads up. After he makes the call, we go to a flop and see King 7-4 Rainbow. Now, in a 3-bet pot, this is a board. I'm going to bet some of the time, check some of the time. I end up checking here. Turns an offsuit queen, full rainbow, makes another great turn for my hand, even stronger, 2 overs. We end up checking back turn. River is going to be an off or a 4, pairing the board. Doesn't change anything, but we end up checking back, flipping over a hand, and our jacks are good. And I'll take hands that I thought would never win for $63. Alright, in this next hand, we're going to go against the same villain we just went against. There's going to be a limp under the gun. It's going to fold to the button, and he's going to raise to $18. I look down at King Jack of Spades in the small blind. Now, in the small blind, I try for the most part to implement a 3-bet or fold strategy. So I decided to raise it to $55 for the third time I 3-bet the guy to my direct right. The under the gun ends up folding and the button calls to a flop of the Queen of Diamonds, 7 of Spades, 4 clubs. So we flop backdoor equity, essentially. Nothing. I end up down betting to $45 and he calls. The turn is a good turn for us. We turn the Ace of Spades. So we have a gut shot to Broadway and the nut flush draw. This is also a card that it favors my range much better than it favors his range. And he's around 200 behind, which is right around a pot size bet. So I figure it's a good card to put him all in. I end up jamming and he snap mucks. Alright, another fun hand against our favorite person. There will be a limp in early position. I look down at pocket jacks again. The guy to our direct right, who we love to play against, opens at $10. Again, another pretty clear spot on the button. I decided to raise it to $35 this time. And you can just start to see the steam coming out of this guy's head. He makes a snarky remark talking about how he has Andrew Nemi and Brad Owen to his left making a vlog about 3-betting. So you can tell he's a little bit tilted. Anyways, he still calls like he has every other time. Now, unfortunately, I did not take any notes on this hand, so I don't remember what the board was. However, I end up reaching for my chips, and he just mucks before I even put out a bet. I end up showing him the jacks, just to show him that I'm not picking on him, and to ease his tilt a little bit.
This hand kicks off with some interesting banter between my good buddy Sal and the guy he's 3-bet about 73 times this session. I think y'all will find it interesting to listen to.
I wanted to 3-bet you.
Unfortunately, we didn't get the audio of the guy's response to Sal, but he did turn and say, "I wanted you to." So 3-betting had crossed my mind, but after he makes that comment, he seemed a little stronger. I don't really look into these physical tells as often, but he seemed genuine about it, so I did take it into consideration. So I decided to just take a hand that plays well post-flop and go ahead and take a flop. Again, we flopped pretty well on a 9-7-6 board with 2 clubs, and he ends up leading for 15. This is an extremely wet board, so obviously just going to go ahead and put in the raise with a strong hand. He tanks for a while before jamming. The jam ends up being for around $210 total. Again, liking the spot but not in love with it. Gonna make the call. The turn is the 10 of clubs, which I announced as a bad card for me before my opponent flips over pocket 10s. So I realized it was a bad turn for me because it completed the flush, but I didn't realize he had turned me dead to a chop. So yet again, loving the poker variants, but that's okay because we've got a lot of poker left to play in this session. For the record, I did not see the river card, being as it was basically irrelevant. I was getting ready to pay him his money. So just as a prerequisite for the next hand, I failed to realize that seat 1 only had about 80 to 90-ish dollars in front of him to start the hand. So my river bet sizing is pretty bad. Should just be jamming there. And I realize that now looking back. Also pretty upset with myself for not paying attention. So we're going to kick this hand off with everybody folding around to the button who decides to limp. I look down at pocket 4s in the small blind and go ahead and limp. I don't see any reason to raise. Definitely not folding pair. And the big blind is going to check back. So it's definitely been a pretty rough session thus far. But things are about to turn around because we're going to flop ourselves bottom set here on a 10-8-4 flop. I very briefly considered trapping, but the pot's too small, don't want it to check through, and there are 2 spades on the board, so I go ahead and bet 5 and a 6. The big blind is going to make the call, button folds, and we're going to take a turn. The turn is the ace of diamonds, and we've got another clear value bet here. I decided to bet 15, protect against spades, and gain values from 10s, 8s. 2 pair combinations, any hand containing an ace that he has. His range is really wide once he checks back big blind. He has all the 2 pair combos, and he's going to have almost every combination of spades he can have, except for the stronger hands such as ace king, ace queen, king queen of spades. I suspect that he raises those pre. And just to keep things simple, also, we've got ourselves a set, and obviously going to be trying to build the pot and make the maximum. The guy decides to call the turn because he doesn't like money, doing his best to give it over to me. The river is the 5 of diamonds, which shouldn't change anything. I fail to heed the oscillating fan's warning as it shakes its head no as I fire another $30, trying to make the maximum. Get raised all in, snap call because we got ourselves a set. Thank you, sir. Except we're going to get the bad news. He's got a set of 8s. Luckily, it wasn't for too much more money, but second set over set of the session. Tilt might be an understatement.
While Matt's been getting cooler after cooler, I've been slowly grinding my stack up, still trying to book a win for the calling stations. In this hand, I have ace 9 of diamonds, and I open under the gun $10. I get a call from Matt to the left, and then we get a 3-bet from the guy in seat 1. Now, normally this would probably be an easy fold, considering I open under the gun, and then he 3-bets under the gun plus 2. However, I have a little bit of history with this guy, and I feel like I can outplay him post-flop. Plus, the raise is only to $30, so I'm still getting pretty good odds. I end up calling, Matt ends up calling behind me. Trying to also take this bad reg's money, and we see a pretty ideal flop. Ace, Jack 8 with the Jack 8 of diamonds. So we flop top pair and the nut flush draw. I check it, Matt checks it, and then he bets $40. Now, I end up check raising to 150, and in this spot, it's kind of this weird value bluff kind of hand, because with this regular, I can definitely see him calling with worse hands like kings, queens, like stuff like big hands that he just gets too attached to. He could also have hands like ace king, ace queen, which I'm obviously behind, but he only had around 150 back, and so he could easily just on any turn card just shove, and it's kind of hard for me to call off there, considering he has a range advantage. So I think going all in and just realizing my equity is just a better play here, considering he has like a relatively shorter stack to pot ratio. After tanking for about 30 seconds or so, he ends up going all in for about 30 more, and I make the easy call. Basically this is what I wanted to begin with. I table my hand just as soon as it happens. He deals a 7 of diamonds on the turn, so basically just no sweat right there. And then 9 on the river, just a formality, as I obviously already had the nuts. However, I do think there was a small chance that my ace was good as it was, and we scoop a nice big pot to turn this vlog around hopefully. So a little background information, in this game that we play, there is a dealer's choice button that goes around. So essentially when the game button and the dealer choice button meet, the person on the button gets to choose a game. I end up getting to choose the game of PLO high, where Matt gets to play this hand and I don't.
So in this hand we're going to go over, I look down at Jack Jack 6-6 and a PLO high only hand. There are about 72 limps, and I'm in the small blind. Definitely don't want to be bloating pots out of position in this game, so I go ahead and limp for 5. Big blind completes, and we're going to take a flop. Flops ace king jack rainbow, and action checks all the way through on the flop. The turn is another ace, bringing a backdoor flush draw, but it didn't feel super relevant in a PLO pot on a paired board. So I end up betting about half pot and getting 1 call. The river was an offsuit 7, and I decided to go for extremely thin value against trip aces, or possibly a flop straight like king 10. But I think, especially in this game, I think king 10 just pots flop just so often. So I was really just targeting that really thin line of trip aces. I bet 20, and this was definitely more of an exploitative bet, because I didn't think I was going to get raised as a bluff by this player, and I thought I could get him to call off extremely light when I bet that sizing, even though he knows so often he's beat. Sal, for the record, did not like my bet until we talked about it after the session, and I think he came around for the reasons that I gave.
Yeah, initially I thought it was a terrible bet on the river.
Thanks, Sal.
Well, I've been in similar spots before, playing PLO. However, in the specific game where we play a mixed game, 1 hand per orbit, and it's not always a PLO game. They have their made-up games, so these players don't have a lot of experience playing PLO or pot limit games, and so I think with that background information, I think it's a fine bet, considering it was such a small bet, and yeah, you're targeting against a specific player who doesn't have a lot of experience. You get called by trip aces. So in hindsight, I don't think it's a terrible bet. I end up agreeing with you. Alright, so we have an interesting hand here. So starting out, it's gonna fold to me in the cutoff. I look down at 2 red jacks. Pretty standard open. I end up opening to $10, and then Matt will be to my direct left.
I'm going to look down at ace-queen here, and when Sal opens from the cutoff, he's going to have an extremely wide range. Ace-queen is doing extremely well, so we've got a pretty clear 3-bet here. I decided to 3-bet to $30, never expecting Sal to fold, like ever.
We do get a cold call in the big blind. He asks how much it is, and he calls for 30. Now, it's an interesting spot here. Now, I would flat here about 85-90% of the time. However, with the cold call, I'm more incentivized to 4-bet with the dead money here and just try to take it down pre-flop. But if we do get some calls behind us, we still have a lot of playability.
So now when Sal 4-bets here, he's going to have a fairly strong range. I mean, I give him credit for having certain bluffs, such as ace-5 suited. Sal's been known to be creative at times. But this is where I obviously just realized I'm behind his range. Just going to go ahead and let it go. Except that's not what I do. I debate. The biggest debate I had in my mind was whether or not in this spot I wanted to use ace-5 suited or ace-queen as my 5-bet bluff. Now, I do move in with ace-queen. It is not a value bet. I do not think I have the best hand. This is a bluff. I do not want to get called. It was an interesting spot because I decided to use ace-queen because it has better card removal. Ace-5 suited, definitely a more standard 5-bet bluff jam. But I decided to vary a little bit here and use ace-queen because of the better card removal. Blocking queens as well as aces, unlike ace-5 where I'm only really blocking aces and ace-king. But yeah, so I jam as a bluff here, and definitely looking for a couple of folds. I also think when the big blind cold calls my 30, I mean, he can be trapping here, but he's going to have a really hard time calling the jam, so I wasn't too worried about getting through him. But Sal, on the other hand, I was worried about getting through.
Yeah, so the big blind ends up tanking for quite a while, and honestly, I was more worried about him that he had a hand like trapped aces. I feel like in the 1-2 lower stakes games, people end up like when they're facing a 3-bet just cold call with their super premium hands instead of going for the 4-bet. So I was kind of worried about that. After a while, he does eventually fold, and then Matt, before I have much time to really have a decision, Matt ends up offering to show a card for free.
You want to pick one and then make a decision? Am I allowed to do that before? Okay. And also, why is really strong hand this is a nightmare and I can't show the others. You can watch the vlog.
Now, in this instance, I figured I was either going to see a queen, a king, or an ace. If there was an ace, I was 100% calling because he has way more combos of ace-king than he does of aces.
And apparently of ace-queen.
And then with the queen, I just figured he'd always have queens there. I never expected him to have ace-queen there, so I see a queen, I immediately mug. And then with if I were to see a king, it would have been 50-50. Probably still would have leaned towards a call just because he does have more combos of ace-king, but he can also have kings there, so a little bit tougher, but we ended up seeing the queen and gives us the easy fold.
Alright, so this hand actually kicks off playing 3-handed super late in the session. I look down at ace, king, queen 3, double suited with an ace and king suits. Obviously, super premium hand, 3-handed. They're just in general too, obviously. So I'm gonna open. I have a very clear button open. Small blind is gonna make the call, and Sal has other plans.
Yeah, so I look down at king, king, queen. I forget what the fourth card was. I want to say it was a 6, but it was double suited, both to the king suits.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But I mean, it'd just be cool if we got to know for sure if somebody would have got the footage of the hand, not pointing fingers. But go ahead, Sal.
All right, well, it was super late in the session, and I was really tired, and I had stopped recording at that point, especially since it was 3-handed. I didn't expect to get a hand such as this. But anyways, I get king, king, queen 6, give or take, double suited, pretty obvious 4-bet, again, 3-handed, super premium. I make a 40, Matt calls third person in the hand ends up calling to a flop of 10 of diamonds, 9 of clubs, 4 of clubs. So I flop a gut shot and second nut clubs. Alright, pretty obvious c-bet. I ended up betting 100. Goes to Matt.
I've got the nut flush draw here and the gutter to the nuts. I contemplate raising here, but I know Sal's capable of 3-betting there with rundown type hands that are going to connect well with that board, especially including all the sets. Jack, 10-9, or Queen 10-10-9 with a suit. So I didn't think I had much of a range advantage here, and I've got plenty of equity, so I just go ahead and make a call. And the turn is pretty nice in my opinion. It's the deuce of clubs. We make the nuts, and we're feeling pretty good about the hand, especially when Sal decides to.
So I ended up checking this card. So this is a really interesting card. So it's a card that I think is that kills a lot of action, and I think with sets I get 1 straight of value, and on the river, if the board doesn't pair, he just folds. So I mean, I can definitely just bet pot on the turn, and he's more than likely gonna call. However, I feel like this is a better spot to check jam. I think he's gonna bet a lot of his sets here still having a lot of equity, even if he does have, or if he has a set plus a straight draw or whatever. So I ended up checking to him. And then my boy Matt here.
Also, just to your point, very quickly, I think checking there and allowing me to fire off with a naked ace of clubs, like I'd be very willing to do. I love myself some blockers. So I think it's a good spot to check jam. Again, I'm not a mixed game expert by any means. Hold'em's my main game, but I've got a very easy decision. I've got myself the nuts. There's not enough money in the pot, so I'm gonna go ahead and bet pot. Sal is gonna check jam like the kind partner he is, and I'm gonna go ahead and make the make the pretty clear call here. Sal unfortunately gets the bad news and announces that he is drawing dead to the dealer and to just run it.
Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate to see that he just had the nuts. I've heard some people tell me that maybe I should just check call there. However, again, 3-handed, it's very, there's not as many nut flushes versus second nut flushes in 3-handed play. And I think the way I get the most value is on the turn by either worse flushes or by sets and draw heavy hands, like hands with wraps, whatnot. Or if he had something like the naked ace of spades, he was going to fold to a bet anyways, ace of clubs. He was either going to fold anyways, or use it as a bluff when I bet out on the river or on the turn, and it puts me in a much tougher spot when I bet and he jammed as opposed to me check jamming.
Also, there are plenty of hands that I'm just gonna want to bet turn and then just check back river with all my set hands.
Exactly. So that's how I can extract the most value from sets, because if the board doesn't pair on the river, he just checks back or just folds to a bet on the river if I lead out. So unfortunate way to end the session, but it is what it is. These are the only chips I have left. After that, this guy. Man, it's brutal to be grinding the entire session and then just lose it all to one hand, especially the Matt of all people.
I mean, what can I say? Some hands you just get outplayed,
Yeah, sure. But it is what it is. It was a three-handed.
Obvious cooler situation. I mean, three-handed second nuts versus nuts. I mean,
It is
stacks
what
are
it
getting
is.
in.
Yeah, it is what it is. Basically unavoidable. The only way I could have gotten away from it if the board was paired, but that like I said, it is what it is. So after all that time, Matt at least ended up booking a win with most of my money. He won a little bit over 800, and I ended up losing right around 1,000, mostly because of that one hand. But anyways,
So we're going to be trying to pump out at least semi consistent content. Again, still working out the editing bugs and whatnot.
yeah, be a little patient with us. It's a lot of work.
Neither of us have any experience in
Zero.
editing, really.
Zero.
Yeah, so definitely just poker players, not editors. Hopefully along the journey you can not only watch us become better poker players, but also better editors and content creators in general. But forget all that, because the most important thing, thanks for watching. Really hope you enjoyed, and I hope you tune back in for episode 2. But for now, I'm Matt, this is Sal,
And we're the Calling Stations.